Hi. Let me see. Yes, I'm working. Okay, hi. I struggled with Collaborate for a couple hours, and basically, it's not the best. It is just simply not the best tool to use. I'm going to use Zoom, and unfortunately, I only have an account that allows just a few people. I think less than 5 people, so I can't really use Zoom for a class meeting. It's possible that if we meet together, we can use Skype or something like that. That might be better. I will look into it. I will still struggle with Collaborate, but boy, it just is very awkward and it doesn't do the things that I like that it should do. You'll find out here with Zoom how much easier it is and how much clearer, simpler it is to work with. Okay, so we're on the announcements page. We just came into the course. I'm going to move over here to lessons. I click on lessons and I open up to the lessons page. I click on lesson 1. That opens up lesson 1. Lesson 1 has several items in it. Introduction to stars and galaxies, learning objectives. Now the learning objectives are used for discussion. Each chapter has 2 or 3 chapters, and each chapter has several learning objectives in it. In discussion, you should choose 3 learning objectives from 1 chapter to answer the questions about and to discuss. Then you will post that by Wednesday in the discussion area. And then by Sunday, you will have had to reply to 2 classmates about their postings. So that's how discussion works. Now I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. I will look at the video. This one here is actually, we don't use this one anymore, so I'm not going to focus on it. We use the Nebraska Astronomy Applet program as for our labs. Now, the lab has several links in it. You should read through those links. Each lab has 2 other items that require your input. One would be the worksheet. And so if you see, after familiarizing yourself with the simulator interactives, follow instructions and answer the questions in, and then this PDF or RTF file is a document file that has both instructions, and you're going to write your answers in on that. The underlined title of each lab item for the different lessons, if you click on that, that will open up, that should open up a, it's like a lab quiz, but it's not really a lab quiz. It's just a way for you to transfer the information that you put on your worksheet into the system so that the system can grade it for you. And so we open it up, and you can see there's questions here that you have to answer. And you should be able to open this and close it at will. And there's no time limit on the labs. So you should be able to open and close this without submitting. So if you come down and you can see here, it says save all answers or save and submit. If you hit save and submit, then that will be your submission and you will end up grading the lab. But we're not going to do either of those. We're just going to back out. We're going to leave the page. And then we're going to cancel. Okay, so what we're going to do then is when you do the lab, the key on this, the key that most students have trouble with the labs with, is that they do not read all of the information that's provided by the Nebraska site. If we click Basic Coordinates and Seasons Lab, this opens up, and this will be the lab that you're going to use for lesson 1. And you'll come down to the main contact and click on each of the items, The first item talks about the units of latitude and longitude. Excuse me. It defines latitude and longitude for you and gives you some information about that. So here's a calculator that is used, and you can play with this. So you have to spend the time to read through these introductory sections, because there's information in here that you will then have to answer on your worksheet. And if you just go to the worksheet and do the simulations, and then you answer questions, you won't be able to answer the questions because you haven't read the fundamental information first. So you have to go through each of these items. The next one is finding latitude and longitude, and it goes through here. Now, usually the optionals are not, you don't really have to read the optionals because it doesn't show up usually. If you haven't read the optionals and you can't figure out an answer, then you might want to go back and take a look at that. But pretty much the optionals are optional, so you don't really have to do those. So how do we find latitude? How do we find longitude? It goes through and gives you some information about that. Brief history is optional. The terrestrial coordinate explorers, we open this up, and now you can see that there is some applets here that you can work with. So we can move this dot around, and when you move the dot around, the latitude and longitude show up. And so you would, fill out the first table for question 1. You can fill that out using this. Now, there is an issue that says open Google Maps. Open Google, once you get close to where you want it to be, then go ahead, open Google Maps, and Google Map will give you a written definition of exactly where you're at. Now, if you're close, but you can't quite get there, if you open Google Maps and then type in the correct coordinates, then that will refine your answers better. And okay, so that was the terrestrial coordinates. Then we go to celestial equatorial coordinates. It talks about the various types of coordinates we use for finding stars or celestial objects, and it goes through this information. And it's real important that you read through this. Right ascension, for example, it talks about how which way right ascension goes. That is, east is the direction of increasing right ascension. That's down here at the bottom of the page here. Now, that will be a question that shows up in the worksheet. So if you haven't read this page, then you're going to be confused. You're going to be struggling. And I've actually had students spend hours searching answers online because they didn't read the information that they were given and supposed to read based upon the instructions. So then we go to the explorers. These are little applets that are available. I don't know if you can see this. Well, I will take a look, but there's an applet similar to the one for the Earth, but now it's an applet for the celestial sphere or the sky, the stars in the sky. All right, so you go through orbits and light. There's a couple of applets here on orbits and light, and you'll play with that. Make sure you read through these. You'll have to read through these in order to answer the questions that are in the worksheet. And then seasons and ecliptic. This is another applet that you use to work with and answer questions. But you have to play with it a little bit to get to understand how it works, and that's a little confusing sometimes. But you can't do these labs in a rush. That's just the final word. You cannot do these labs in a rush. You want to start early in the week to do the labs, and That way you won't be pressured by the end of the week to get things done all in one day, especially in the early modules or early lessons, because you really don't know what you're doing. So that's my introduction. That's a quick introduction to the labs. I want to see how well this particular uh, system uh, records the information and get this out to you as soon as I can. So I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye, and we're going to end the meeting now.